Good morning you guys, it's Karen, and a bit of an unusual video for this channel, which is mostly about my dog Watson. But the reason I called it Mrs. Ginger and her dog is because some of the videos will be about me, Mrs. Ginger. Mostly health videos, and I've done a few on this channel before about my Ehlers-Danlos, etc. I wanted to come and do a video for you on my urodynamics study experience because I looked for a video trying to find somebody's personal experience about it before I went so that I would know what to expect, and I couldn't find one. So I thought that would be really useful, but I also thought if I do that video there'll be a lot of questions about my actual condition and, you know, the history of it and what I've had before, etc. So I'd be better doing a video explaining my painful bladder syndrome and where it started, what I've had done, etc. So this video will be about my painful bladder syndrome. If there's time, I will make it into one video and also talk about the urodynamics test, but I think that will probably be in a separate video. So I've got my notes in front of me in case you see me looking down. This problem that I have started when I was 11 years old. I was in pain every time I went for a wee, and then I got really scared because I went for a wee, was in real bad agony, and there was blood coming out as well. And so I told my stepmom, which was actually quite embarrassing because I only moved to live with my stepmom at 11 years old, so I can't have been there very long. But anyway, she said, well, I'm going to have a look and see if there's anything, you know, cut down there, because that's what I was telling her it felt like. I said, it feels like I've got glass down there. So I remember she had a look and she said, I can't see anything, we're going to have to take you to the doctor. Although I think she said it could just be your period, but it would be unusual to start it that early because I didn't have like big boobs or anything like that, and it would also be unusual for it to feel like glass. And I remember, bless him, my dad, she told my dad, and my dad went and bought me a box of Maltesers and said, I hear you're a woman now, bless his heart. So anyway, it wasn't that, it wasn't my period. I didn't start that till I was like 14 years old, and we did end up going to the doctors, and it was a bladder infection, which I got antibiotics for, and it passed. So, fast forward many years to my 30s, I didn't really have any problems with cystitis. I had a few infections, but like 5 or 6 years apart, you know, certainly I didn't have recurrent infections. I know a lot of people have battled with their whole life. I did not have recurrent infections. I would occasionally get an infection. I would go and get antibiotics, it would clear up, it was fine. Met Kev, no problems at all with that, but then we went to Gran Canaria on a holiday and I got a really bad infection while I was there, and I was in so much pain, it was awful. I think it's just because I didn't drink enough, because, you know, if you're not hydrated, that you're more likely to get it. I think it was also the plane. Where I'm currently at, a plane will cause me pain and possibly an infection. I didn't go to any doctor or anything there. We stayed in the little apartment we were in for a couple of nights because I was just too uncomfortable to go out. And I think it sort of spontaneously got better enough for me to fly home. But then I went to the doctor, I got antibiotics, it went away, no problem at all. About a year later, I'd had minor symptoms over that year, like occasional stinging and thinking, oh, have I got an infection again? But then it would go away. But about a year later, at a very, very stressful time in my life, actually, I was working for a horrible, horrible man, and I had other symptoms coming on, joint problems and headaches, and decided that I was going to go away for the weekend, or Kev decided we was going to take me away for the weekend to Barcelona on a long weekend. Told my boss, I'm taking a few days off, I'm just at the end of my tether and I need to kind of step back and relax. So we went to Barcelona, but unfortunately I got another really bad infection and it was worse there. We spent the first night in the hotel. Kev went out and got pizza and brought it back to the hotel, bless him, he's always been so good. And I just was in agony every time I went for a wee, it was agony. When he came back, he actually sat in the bathroom. We had our pizza in the bedroom, and then he came and sat in the bathroom and was talking to me because I was just sitting on the toilet the whole night because it was too painful to sit down, and I constantly felt like I needed a wee, and so I was just sitting on the toilet. And then as I started bleeding. You know, like I felt like I needed to go and it would be blood coming out. And so he was like, right, we need to go and see a doctor. Like I think that just freaked him out. It was like, oh my God, you're bleeding. Like, we need to go to a doctor. So we went there was actually a hospital 2 streets away. And I think Kev must have phoned an emergency doctor. I don't even remember this because I was in so much pain. He'd got an appointment at the hospital, and so we walked, like I said, it was two streets away. I put Kev's trousers on. He had these linen trousers, and I just didn't want anything tight at all. So because they were a lot bigger than I was at the time, probably now they'd be too small for me, but they were really baggy. So I put those on, and I was sort of hobbled along the street, holding onto his arm. You know, you'd think I'd broken my leg or something the way I was walking. Or in fact, this old woman gave us a really funny look, as if to say, you know, have you done something to that girl? Because did not look well at all. Got to the hospital. The receptionist didn't speak English. Thankfully, I speak Spanish, and I really had to dig deep because, you know, I wouldn't say I suppose I am fluent. I did live in Barcelona for a year, many years ago, but it was years ago, and I don't remember it. I don't speak it anymore. And so I had to really dig deep because, like I said, I was in pain and I just didn't want to have to think. But I gave her all the details, and Kev was like, oh my God, I'm so impressed, because he'd never heard me speak Spanish before. They were brilliant at that hospital. So I went behind curtains and they were telling me everything, and they said, I'm going to go and tell your husband. And somebody tried to explain what was going on to him, but they basically just said that I had a really bad infection. They gave me antibiotics, they gave me painkillers, which we then went and got from a chemist. And I remember sitting in the hospital crying and saying to them, and I was thinking about all the words about, like, right, what's the Spanish for this, what's the Spanish for that? And then when the guy come, I was like, I just want to be able to get my plane home tomorrow, because we were due to get on a plane that following morning. And I said, I just want to be home. I know it's going to be agony, but like, if you can give me something to get me well enough to go home, I don't want to stay in this hospital tonight. I just want to go home, you know. And he was like, it's fine, we'll give you all this painkillers and antibiotics. And so the following day was awful. Like, that flight from Barcelona to get back here was just bloody awful, because I was in pain the whole time. I was constantly in and out of the bathroom, which made it really embarrassing, you know, because I'm sure people were like, what is with this woman? She's constantly up and down to the bathroom. I had to drink a lot of water because I had put, I'd also bought some, you know, like you can get Sister Pure in. I put some of those in a bottle and was drinking that to try and make it a little bit less painful when I was going, because as I was weeing, it was like weeing, some people say it's like weeing boiling water if you have an infection. I felt like I was weeing knives. That's what it felt like to me. And it would then be agony after finishing the wee, which was normally just a few drops. You wouldn't actually be properly going every time, which is why you needed to keep going, you know, why I needed to keep going back to the bathroom. Anyway, got home, went straight to the GP, and from that point onwards, I was constantly at the GP going, no, this hasn't worked, because they gave me antibiotics, then more antibiotics, then, you know, I had a lot of Sister Purine and all these drinks for cystitis, but then they referred me to urology. That all happened in 2005. So, no, 2006. So 13 years ago. And that's where my major problems started, from that Barcelona infection. I don't even think it was the Gran Canaria one, because I seem to have got over that. But once I had that Barcelona one, it just, I feel like I never recovered, you know, my bladder never recovered from it. And they did say to me eventually that you have probably got nerve damage from the infection that could take years to repair. But I mean, here we are 13 years later and it's still not repaired. So that first year after coming back from Barcelona was hideous. I actually left my job because of this, coupled with other symptoms, coupled with a horrible boss. And I had a 3-month period where I didn't work, thank God, because otherwise I don't know where I'd be now, because I couldn't leave the house. I was in too much pain. But I finally got to see urology, and I got prescribed amitriptyline. And that was like a lifesaver to me. It knocked me out, and I was so tired for the first, I think, month or two when I was on it, that I was literally going to bed at 8 o'clock at night, getting up at 10 o'clock in the morning, being awake for an hour or so, then going back to sleep again. I barely was awake for the first month, and most people give up on amitriptyline because of that. I was extremely lucky that I had left a job and had negotiated a deal whereby I got, I think, 6 months worth of pay, and so I was able to just recover, and it didn't matter that I was tired every day. I could just go with it, you know, which I can imagine for most people just isn't doable. Like, I don't know how I would have worked through that, but it did take a lot of the pain away, and it made the difference between me being able to stay at home or leave the house. It allowed me to leave the house. It made it more bearable. There was still problems. I needed to go to the bathroom a lot, and if I didn't drink a lot of water, I would then feel like I had cystitis. But I kept going back to the GP and they kept testing, and it was showing no bacterial infections at all. And the urologist just said that I'd had this nerve pain, this nerve damage from this big infection, and that it would get better on its own. They did send me for a cystoscopy. So I had a cystoscopy, found it agony, didn't expect it to be, but I found it agony. I was crying my eyes out afterwards. They had to put me in a little side room and were like, oh, it shouldn't be this painful, but it was. That didn't show anything. I had thought at the time I had I can't ever say the word, but interstitial cystitis. That's what I had kind of self-diagnosed, if you like. But it didn't show up that that was the case. There was nothing. And so they went back to this nerve damage. Nothing more they could do. I did try long-term antibiotics. That was before I went to urology. The GP gave me long-term antibiotics, and that didn't work either. But once I started amitriptyline, things slowly started to get better. I did then get my job in the NHS, and the first couple of months there were horrendous because I was still having to constantly go to the bathroom. If I didn't drink a lot of water, I would be in pain. But if I did drink a lot of water, I would need to go to the bathroom twice an hour. It would be painful once I had any amount of wee in my bladder, if you like. I just couldn't hold anything at all. I had no urgency, and I've never had any problems with leakage at all, or incontinence, anything like that. Thankfully, thank goodness, I haven't had any problems with that. It's just that if I don't drink enough water, I feel like I've got cystitis, even though it never comes up with me having infections. But if I do drink enough water, my bladder doesn't seem to be able to hold the required amount. So normal people can hold up to about 500 millilitres in the day and 700 to 800 overnight. I can hold up to 600 overnight, so not too bad, but that's on amitriptyline. But during the day, sometimes it's as little as 50 mil. The most I can hold is 300 mil, so half of about what a normal person should be able to hold before my nerves send me the signals that I need to go. And like I said, the only way I can get around, if I'm going somewhere like a dog walk and I think, right, I'm not going to be able to go to the loo, what I have to do is not drink anything for about 2.5 hours before I leave, which then means that later on that day I'm in pain because I've not had enough water, and it makes me feel like I've got cystitis, even though I don't. I should say that I've also had an ultrasound of my kidneys, urethra and bladder. I've had another cystoscopy a couple of years ago to see again if they can see anything, and there was still nothing there. And there was a few years where I didn't see a urologist because basically they discharged me and said, you've got nerve damage, there's nothing we can do, you just need to wait for it to heal, but it could take years. So it was only a few years ago now that I went back for a second time to urology, because although I'm not in agony now, nowhere near it, nothing like after the Barcelona infection, it's still life limiting for me, because if I go anywhere, I have to think about where a toilet is, because otherwise I can't drink anything, and then if I don't drink anything, I'm in pain. When I was working in the NHS, it wasn't so bad, other than I had to, often tell my boss why I'd had to leave a 2-hour meeting at 3 times, why I needed to have, there was a particular desk I was going to sit at, but it was miles away from a toilet. The lift was always broken, and my knees were so bad I couldn't actually get down the stairs because I've had knee operations. That's a whole nother video. But things like that, it was embarrassing, but I could work around it. When I'm at home, it's absolutely fine. But the way that it affects me is for dog walking. I would love to be able to, walk Watson more than I already do. But a lot of the time, I can't, because it just causes me too much pain to not drink for 2 to 3 hours beforehand, or it's not convenient. So that's why I decided to go back to urology a couple of years ago. I don't like the guy I'm seeing. He's very, very arrogant. I'll give you one example of something he said. I said to him, why am I having to wait so long between clinics? I said, I understand that the clinics are busy, but surely 9 months should not be acceptable for me to have to wait. I know that that's not the waiting times. I know that's not their goal. And I said, and I know that actually I have to phone up and chase it every single time. I would be sitting waiting for an appointment. I'd never get an appointment. And I said to him, I had to chase it, and it was 9 months. And he went, well, that's not that long really, is it? And I said to him, it's that long when you're in pain? That's a long time. That's nearly a year. You know, 9 months, you could have a baby in 9 months. Like, I was fuming. I couldn't believe he said that. And also another thing where I thought I suppose it's arrogance, but also he believes his nurses. But I had said I felt I was retaining urine. I said, I can go to the loo and come out and then need to go again. And there's definitely, I don't go back and there's just a few drops. I go back and I'm weeing more out. I said, so I know that I am retaining urine. And he said, well, we'll scan you. He said, do you need to go now? And I said, yeah, absolutely. So I went and they scanned and it came out as 0. And so I went straight back in to see him and he went, no, there's nothing there. And I went, I'm telling you, if I went to the bathroom, I could wee, no problem. You know, I said I could probably do about 100 to 200 mils. But of course he didn't say go to the toilet. He said, well, the scan is showing nothing, so it's nothing. But since having this urodynamics, that's happened twice again. And I've said, and I've been able to prove to them and say, okay, I'll show you, because there was an actual toilet you had to pee on. And sure enough, I had actually nearly 400 still in there, half of what was in there where I'd been sitting drinking glasses of water in the waiting room. So I'm annoyed that he didn't take me seriously. He just kept saying to me, no, it's just the signals aren't working. The signals are telling you there's something in there and there isn't. That has never happened to me. When I feel like I need a wee, I am able to wee something out. I never go to the bathroom and there's nothing there. So it's not that the signals are not working. That's what happens when you've got cystitis. You often feel like you need to go and then it's just a few drops, but that is not the lasting damage that I've had. It is that I constantly need to go, and I am going, but just not very much. Okay, so the treatment that this guy, he's been wrong. That's the other thing. This guy that I'm seeing, he told me that he would try me on these particular tablets, and if they didn't work, he would want to do a rigid cystoscopy. So the 2 cystoscopies I've had are flexible cystoscopies. They're very thin, flexible tubes. He was saying he wanted to do a rigid cystoscopy under general anaesthetic, which I thought to myself, I'm not keen on, because the flexible cystoscopies caused me agony. And I didn't imagine that having a rigid tube up there would be any better. And I didn't really want to go under general anaesthetic unless absolutely necessary. Anyway, I went away and tried the medicine he gave me, which was solifenacin. It was called Vesicare, and it made me feel awful. And I tried to persevere with it, and because it started to work, it actually started to work, but I couldn't bear the side effects, which were indigestion. Basically, I constantly had indigestion, even though I was on a huge amount of antacids and proton pump inhibitors, etc., etc. So I stopped. I gave it a second shot. There was so much time between appointments. You know, I was doing as much as I could myself. So I gave it a second shot, and I went to the GP and tried a different version of it called oxybutynin, which is the same type of drug, and that didn't work. And I also tried Betmega, which is, what is Betmega known as? Miregberon. No, it's known as Betmega is the name, but it's Miregberon is the tablet. And I'm still taking that. That has helped a tiny bit. In addition to all the medication I've been prescribed, I have tried every herbal remedy going and every self-help remedy, i.e. particular diets where you avoid certain things, and none of them have helped. The only thing that has helped me, and it's not a preventative thing, it hasn't changed the symptoms, it just is soothing, is a spray. And it was actually my husband's suggestion to put it in a spray, because I started off, I had it in a jug, I'd fill it up with water and I'd put a couple of drops of peppermint essential oil or lavender essential oil in it and pour it after I'd been to the bathroom, and it sort of numbs the area, and that was like a huge relief. And sometimes I wouldn't have been able to leave the house without that. Even on the amitriptyline, there was occasions where it flared up. Normally when I was nervous, or when I'd had alcohol, or if I'd worn jeans, or if I had gone on a bike, when I was riding my bike, that seemed to flare it up. Anything that was kind of rubbing the urethra area or irritating from the inside, like alcohol. This spray would help. So my husband said, why don't you put it in a little spray bottle, which I did, and I would highly recommend you do that. But please, if you do that, understand that I don't know if it's causing any damage. I didn't care. I was in so much pain. It just made things bearable, and I could always have this spray on me and know that if it hurt me, I wouldn't have to sit, you know, like if I was out at a restaurant, I wouldn't have to end up sitting in the toilets, which I did one day. Where did we go? Before I discovered this spray, we went somewhere and it started hurting, and Kev was wandering around a shopping centre and I was sitting in a bathroom. this just gives me pain relief. It's almost like, I think in America you get lidocaine, or maybe not just in America, but they won't give it to you here. You get lidocaine you can actually inject yourself or pump into your urethra. It's like lidocaine. But like I said, please understand that I don't know if it's doing any damage, and you need to put the tiniest amount in. Like, start off with 1 drop in a full spray bottle and see how you get on with that. If you don't feel anything, add 1 more drop, because I have also done it where I've put too many drops in a bottle, and that is agony, because you're burning it. You know, it's essential oils. They're not really supposed to be used in that way. That said, I have told both the lady the urologist that did this study that I've just had, and also the arrogant guy, and both of them said that there was no problem using that. It has been mentioned that it is probably my Ehlers-Danlos syndrome that has some contribution to this condition. So it could be loose skin in the bladder. It could contribute to it, but they're not sure how or why. But interestingly, my mum has Ehlers-Danlos. That's where I got it from, and she also has issues with her bladder. So that's kind of where I am now. It's not something that affects me daily, in that I can't do anything. I can go out, I just have to prepare properly, and I have to put up with the resulting pain. So I am keen to get it resolved, and that's why I went on this urodynamic study, because this guy said, okay, remember I said he kept telling me things and then changing his mind, or like when I went back to see him, he had said to me the next step was rigid cystoscopy, but actually when I went back to him, he didn't say that. He said, oh no, we need to do a urodynamic study. And I said to him, oh, I thought you said the next step was rigid cystoscopy. He went, no, because you haven't had a urodynamic study. And I was like, okay. And he told me, we need you to do the urodynamic study so that you can have Botox in your bladder. And so that's what I thought was going to happen. But having now had this, the lady I saw doesn't think that Botox will be recommended. So I don't really have much faith in this guy I'm seeing. But I'm really pleased with the urodynamics study results. So I think I'll leave it here, and then I'll do that separate video. Don't worry, I won't leave long before putting the second video up, but it's just so that I can give it its correct title, and I'll tell you everything that went on during that study and what the results are. So I hope this was interesting. I couldn't see another video like this on the internet of somebody talking about their experience, and I think that it's really comforting. The first thing I do when I'm going to go through any procedure or any condition that I'm looking into is I try to find somebody that's going through the same thing. What is their experience of the medication? What has worked for them? What hasn't worked for them? And so I hope this will be really useful to you and make you feel not so alone, and maybe give you a few ideas about potential things that could be soothing. Something else that's soothing is sitting on an ice pack when you're in really bad pain as well. So that's it. Thank you very much for watching, and I will speak to you again soon.